Yo, 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 welcome back. It is me again doing the second stream, getting caught up, getting through all of the start sit game previews for you guys. Now we're talking the Sunday afternoon games. We got 5 games on the afternoon slate. We've got the Sunday night game, and we've got the awesome Monday night game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Got a lot to talk about here, and I think I lied to you. Is there only 4 games? I guess it's only 4 games on the afternoon slate. For some reason, I thought there were 5. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. So we're going to go through the rest of the games here and discuss start sits for each one here and make sure we give you guys, the lowdown on each of the ones here, who are starting, who are sitting. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I'm missing the Lions and the Cardinals here. So I'll adjust the thumbnail for those of you that get to watch this later. But yeah, so 5 games on the afternoon slate, 2 of which are very good, 3 of which are bleh. And then we got the Sunday night game and the Monday night game, but going to be pretty interesting. Some of the other games here, I think there's still some fantasy plays, so let's talk about those as well. We'll go through a couple of the gross ones first. So we'll begin by talking about the Carolina Panthers and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this game is in LA. Looking like Justin Herbert is going to play this week after Tyrod Taylor found out that he had his lung punctured by the doctor. That was sketchy stuff, but hopefully Tyrod Taylor is healing up okay. But Justin Herbert looked pretty good against the Chiefs on Sunday. I mean, they almost won that game and took the Chiefs to overtime. Absolutely phenomenal rookie performance for Justin Herbert there. And then Carolina Panthers, obviously losing Christian McCaffrey is going to change the complexity and the way that this offense runs. So let's talk about it. Over under 43.5, one of the lower over unders on the week, which again, it makes sense. We're expecting the Chargers to, have a pretty good defense in this one, and Panthers defense hasn't been that great. Chargers are slated to win this one by 6.5. And, as we've noted, Panthers are the worst team against the running backs, have been for a while, still are. But they've actually been pretty decent at slowing down quarterbacks and receivers. We saw Mike Evans had a pretty good game last week, but other than that, haven't been many fantasy performances, either the quarterback or the wide receiver position against the Panthers, nor at the tight end. So I don't know whether that's just the nature of the 2 games that they played up to this point, or that their defense is slightly better than we've anticipated, or that they just give so much up to the run that the other team doesn't need to pass. We'll see. We only have 2 data points, whereas we know the Chargers are pretty good at stopping the run, stopping the pass, although they've given up a good quarterback performance to Patrick Mahomes. They were pretty good at slowing down Joe Burrow in his opening game. So Chargers, one of the better defenses on the slate. Now, in terms of who we're starting, I think DJ Moore is pretty much a locked and loaded starter here, and probably Robbie Anderson at this point is too. We saw last week, even in a tough matchup, DJ Moore got a ton of garbage time points, still hasn't gotten to the end zone, but has top 5 targets in the league at the wide receiver position, whereas Robbie Anderson also getting a lot of looks in this offense. And with Christian McCaffrey going down, there's absolutely no way that these guys don't continue to see that target share, if not a higher target share. So I love both DJ Moore and Anderson in this one, even against a tough Chargers matchup. Teddy Bridgewater is probably someone that you're going to try to avoid putting in your lineup this week. I could definitely see a weird reality where he ends up performing better than expected, but I'm not going to risk that. Now, Mike Davis is the interesting guy to talk about here because we know the Chargers are really good at stopping the run. Only way Mike Davis returns value for you if you're starting him is if he gets a lot of receiving work, which we saw last week. He got a lot of garbage time dump-offs. I don't know that will be the game plan going in. Curtis Samuel will probably play some snaps at running back as well. Reggie Bonifant most likely going to be called up from the practice squad over the weekend, so that way they have another running back there. And then Ian Thomas hasn't really done much of anything. But back to Mike Davis. If you got Mike Davis after picking up Christian McCaffrey, you're probably in the position where you have to start him. I definitely don't hate it, especially in a PPR league, but it's not something I'm going out of my way to do. So if you had depth at the running back position and you're thinking, oh, this is a great, play with Christian McCaffrey out, might want to wait a week. This isn't the matchup that you want to rush out and throw Mike Davis into your lineup. Not playing Bonifant either, and this is assuming he gets caught up from the practice squad. In the Panthers defense, even if they've been okay against the quarterback and receiver, they're not a fantasy defense that we're ever really going to look to start. Now, on the Chargers side, I feel like this is pretty easy, especially now that we are assuming Justin Herbert plays, Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly look like they're playing the Eckler-Gordon type style that we had last year, where both of these guys were very productive for fantasy. They don't have Phillip Rivers, so they're not getting the same target share, but Herbert was definitely able to keep them involved a bit more than Tyrod Taylor was. Keenan Allen looked to be Herbert's favorite target, so RIP Mike Williams, sorry. And then Hunter Henry, I mean, there's just any tight end that's going to get a decent target share is someone that's worth looking at. Chargers defense are probably a pretty decent play here as well. We saw Teddy Bridgewater make a few big mistakes last week that gave the Buccaneers a lot of fantasy points on defense. As we mentioned, Mike Williams, with Herbert not forcing the issue, Mike Williams is definitely more of the deep ball guy. Herbert's probably going to stick with Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry and Austin Eckler for most of his passing work. So I'm really not that excited about Mike Williams until we start seeing them develop some more rapport. And while I think Herbert might be a decent play this week, probably not someone I'm going to be going out and throwing into my starting lineup. Now, all that being said, I know the Chargers have the tendency to lose games like this, and I think the Panthers are still a bit better than people are giving them credit for. So I expect this to be a lower scoring game. Should be enough fantasy volume for the guys that we mentioned. But overall, I think the Panthers can actually surprise in this one. I'm not going to put any decent amount of money on this one, but I've learned over the years, when it looks like the Chargers are going to win, no matter what, they find a way to lose it. And I'm going to call my shot and take the Panthers getting their first victory against the Chargers in week 3. Panthers 17, Chargers 14. Oh, dude, thank you. It was definitely a long battle in getting the 1K subs, but I'm glad we're finally there. And congratulations to the Dolphins, dude. They look good. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick has been a top 5 fantasy quarterback, I think, since I can't remember when things finally started to turn around. It's around week 10 or 11 when Devontae Parker went on that tear. He's been good, and he had that poor week 1, but he's been dominating ever since. So, it's not someone I would rank in the top 5, but he keeps doing it. It's kind of like Ryan Tannehill. Both Ryan Fitzpatrick and Ryan Tannehill, just keep doing it every single week. They keep scoring fantasy points, and everyone keeps ignoring them. So, if you need a spot start each week, those are 2 guys to look at. All right, let's jump over and talk about the New York Jets and the Indianapolis Colts. Do we have to talk about the New York Jets? I guess we'll try to make this one quick. My gosh, if they don't get rid of Adam Gase soon, this is just going to be an absolute nightmare. Colts are favored to win this one by 11.5 points. This is a 44.5 over-under. The Jets are just not good on offense or defense, giving up the 10th most points to quarterbacks, 7th to running backs, 13th to wide receivers, and 14th to tight ends, whereas the Colts have actually been pretty good on defense. Gardner Minshew had a decent game week 1, but then they absolutely trampled Kirk Cousins last week, were able to slow down the likes of Dalvin Cook to a moderate degree, and overall, this is going to be a very, 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 very rough showing again for the Jets on the road. So I'm with Vegas 100% on this one. I'm not starting a single Jet player. It's looking like Jamison Crowder is out. He would be the only guy I would even consider at this point. So Crowder's out. We are still waiting for Denzel Mims to come off of IR. Rashad Perriman got hurt again. So the number 1 and 2 receiver are Braxton Berrios and Chris Hogan. If you're in the desperate enough situation where you have to start one of those guys, then I feel sorry for you. Frank Gore had a lot of carries last week, but is doing absolutely nothing with them. The Colts have a pretty decent front 7, so not starting Frank Gore. Of course, we're not starting Darnold, LaMichael Pirine, Chris Herndon being used 80% to block. Dumbest thing in the world. And Jets defense, no, we're not doing that at all. At least on the Colts side, we've got the gem in Jonathan Taylor that we want to play every single week going forward. Absolute smash play. Even we saw last week where the Colts dominated, he still put up a really good fantasy day. And I would expect a similar outing from him. Look for him to finally get a long breaking touchdown run here. Now, T.Y. Hilton is the name that a lot of people are nervous about, but this is a good situation. I think T.Y. Hilton could get some good work in the first half and still have a good day. He dropped a touchdown pass last week. If you guys watched the game, he would have had a much better day had he actually come down with that pass. Now, in terms of tight ends, I think there's going to be a good tight end play here. Jack Doyle had missed last week and could potentially miss again this week. He's been on the injury report for a while. If Jack Doyle is out, I'm interested in Mo Alley-Cox in like I need a tight end start. Like if you drafted Austin Hooper and you're like, I don't have anyone else, I think Mo Alley-Cox is an interesting streamer this week. But if Jack Doyle was there, probably not going to be starting Mo Alley-Cox. So that's why I got the little asterisk there. And then the Colts defense, arguably the best play on the week. You just start the defense that's playing the Jets. That seems to be the way to do this now. Okay, now talking Nyheim Hines. I think what we are going to start to notice here is that Nyheim Hines is going to be a better play in games in which the Colts are actually trailing or competitive. Hines is going to see a lot more work in third down situations and especially in like 2-minute drills or hurry up offense. Whereas like last week where Jonathan Taylor was able to, grind the clock out and they were able to keep their offense on the field, they never really were in any jeopardy of losing that game. They had no reason to put Hines back on the field. So projecting the type of game script that we're expecting this to be for the Colts and the Jets, Hines is probably not someone I'm going to want to throw in my starting lineup. There are better days ahead for Hines. I'm not dropping him by any means. He showed us that he definitely has the ability to be an Austin Eckler type running back with Phillip Rivers in this backfield, but I just don't think they need him this week, so I'm not going to be risking throwing him back out there. Michael Pittman and Zach Pascal are interesting guys to monitor, guys to keep on your bench, but probably not going to be throwing them out there. And I don't think Phillip Rivers has to do enough against this team to make him worth the start. There's better plays out there, but the Colts should be able to dominate this one. I've got them winning 28-12 final score. All right, let's talk about the best game in terms of awesome starts, in terms of the highest over-under on the week, what we're expecting to be a massive bonanza for fantasy points, the Dallas Cowboys versus the Seattle Seahawks. Oh boy, we've gotten 3 great games with the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to see if they're going to continue to let Russell Wilson cook. 56-point over-under, Seahawks slated to win by 4.5, giving us roughly Seahawks 30, Cowboys 26. Now for you DFS grinders out there, we saw last week that fading the chalk was not a good idea. Cowboys-Falcons was definitely the chalkiest play in the week, but the best tournament lineups had a lot of Cowboys and Falcons in them. I think we're going to see a lot more people pivot back. This will be an even chalkier week for the Cowboys and Seahawks. Fortunately, we have a couple other shootouts if you're looking to pivot off of this game, but in terms of redraft, there's no way I'm trying to get guys off my lineup here. You're trying to jam as many Cowboys and Seahawks in as you can, as long as they're a decent play. So Cowboys have been, pretty pathetic against the receiver. The Seahawks have been the worst team at stopping the receiver, giving up the most fantasy points and the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They've been decent against the run. They've been decent against the tight end. I think the tight end is more a product of Jamal Adams, whereas the run has been more a product of the Seahawks offense, just putting up so many points that the opposing team is to abandon the run. So what do we expect this to look like? We even had a statement from Mike McCarthy today that he has no intention of trying to drain the clock so Russell Wilson stays off. He just wants to score a lot of points. So let's see it. Let's do it. Got a ton of plays in this one. Of course, you're starting Dak. Of course, you're starting Zeke. And I like all of Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup. Now, Gallup, I think a lot of people are worried about right now because he's had 2 stinkers, but he had a pretty miraculous catch in week 2. He should have had a much better day in week 1 with that theatrical performance by Jalen Ramsey getting a flag call that was not a push-off by any means. Gallup is still, I believe, leading this team in air yards, meaning he's getting a lot of downfield shots. Seahawks pass rush isn't that great, so Dak Prescott should have some more time to gear up for some deeper balls in this one. Look for Gallup to have a very good rebound game. He's still a very talented receiver. He's just playing the tougher spot of not being on like those shorter intermediate routes. He's playing the long game, and with the injuries to the Cowboys offensive line, it's been harder for him to get the targets because Dak is having to throw the ball out so quickly. Now, Dalton Schultz is someone that I think a lot of people are going to be clamoring to play this week, but I don't like him at all. First of all, because the Seahawks have been good against the tight end. That's been like their only real good bright spot. Again, a lot of that to do with Jamal Adams. Dalton Schultz had a unsustainable target share last week. He actually had more targets than any of Cooper, Lamb, or Gallup. I don't think that happens again this week. So a lot of people are going to be playing him in DFS. A lot of people are jumping out for him on the waiver wire. I'm not looking at him this week. I think this is a trap. Tony Pollard, you're not playing unless Ezekiel Elliott is hurt. There's no way we're playing either defense in this one, just based on the propensity for this to turn into an absolute blowout. Now, Russell Wilson, number one quarterback on the season, already the favored to win the MVP for the first time in his career. Let's hope they keep that up. Playing Russell Wilson every week until they show us otherwise. Chris Carson is a good play again this week as well. And his involvement in the passing game and scoring passing touchdowns in each week so far has definitely helped keep him up, even though his rushing totals have been nowhere near where they were last year because they've been letting Russell Wilson throw the ball. But Chris Carson's receiving work keeps him as a good start this week. Of course, you're starting Lockett. Of course, you're starting Metcalf. Don't need me to convince you otherwise. Not playing Carlos Hyde until we see a more consistent usage here. Moore is interesting. We saw him have a really good play last week where he made Russell Wilson look really good, but not someone I'm going to be jamming into my lineup. And then Greg Olsen giving you a complete goose last week. Hard to trust him again, but going to be other options here, probably on both teams that you don't necessarily expect, but more so on the Seahawks. David Moore, maybe Josh Gordon will finally get some going. But overall, I'm sticking with the studs. You're jamming as many of them into your lineup as you can. Have some faith in Gallup is the biggest thing I'm trying to push out here, but I think the Seahawks win this one. It should be close. Should be a good game. Seahawks, I got them winning 38-35. Lots of fantasy points to be scored in this game. Okay, let's jump over to the other potential shootout on the afternoon slate. We've got the Lions versus the Cardinals. This one is a 55.5 over-under, half a point less than the Seahawks and Cowboys, which is a little bit surprising considering what the Lions have done offensively, but I think Vegas is anticipating the return of Kenny Golladay, which really opens up this offense for Matt Stafford. Hopefully, it's looking promising that Kenny Golladay is going to be back this week, and I really think the Lions took the same approach that the Eagles did with Miles Sanders. They could have started him last week, but they chose not to. They wanted to make sure he was fully healthy before he comes back. I have total confidence in Kenny Golladay this week, and I really think that will lead to this being the shootout that they want it to be. I think this over-under may be a little bit over-ambitious, but I do think there will be a lot of fantasy points to be had here. Lions have been pretty terrible across the board, giving up a ton of points, quarterbacks, running backs, average against receiver and tight ends, whereas the Cardinals haven't really faced any tremendous talent at the quarterback position. Don't at me with Jimmy Garoppolo, but Dwayne Haskins last week, and the receivers, they did give up a ton of points to Terry McLaurin, but other than that, have been the best team against the receiver. I think that's a bit skewed because of the fact that they haven't faced any real threat at receivers. So this should be a good game. I like all of the main guys here. Stafford, I like Golladay. Jones should rebound with Golladay being able to take out more of the looks from Patrick Peterson. Marvin Jones should have a day. TJ Hawkinson, hopefully he's a bit more involved in this game. And the Cardinals, if they're continuing on their scoring trend, the Lions are going to have to score a lot of points to keep up. DeAndre Swift is interesting to me. I think you can jam him into your lineup as well, especially in PPR leagues. He's seen a really high target share for a running back and has been involved enough for me to trust him. He has a pretty good baseline of points and could blow up any week now. Not that interested in Adrian Peterson because the Cardinals could get out to a really hot start, and then he's game scripted out pretty quickly. And if Golladay is back, I'm not going to jam Danny Amendola into my lineup with Golladay and Jones getting the majority of the targets there. Kerryon Johnson, if you even have him on your bench anymore, just drop him. I don't foresee a world where you're using him in fantasy at any point this year. Quintus Cephas with Golladay back is probably going to get relegated back to dust, and there's no way you're starting the Lions defense this week. On the Cardinals side, we've got the trifecta of Murray, Drake, and Hopkins. You're starting them every single week. Outside of them, it gets a little bit more murky. Chase Edmonds had that touchdown in week 1. He saw his snap share go down again last week, barely had any touches. Chase Edmonds to me is pretty much like Alexander Madison is to Dalvin Cook, where you have to roster him if you have Kenny Drake because he's the league winner if Kenny Drake gets hurt, but he's not someone you're starting unless you're absolutely desperate. Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk, one of these guys will have a good game. Probably going to be Christian Kirk. At some point, he's got to break free with some of those longer passes, but I mean, last week they didn't really have to force the issue and go deep down the field because Washington let them just continue to run the ball with Kyler Murray, and that's hurting Christian Kirk a lot right now. Larry Fitzgerald is just not a lot of upside there, but he could end up, having enough targets where Christian Kirk has another poor game. So I'm probably not trying to jam either of those guys into my lineup. Same problem with Isabella as we have with Kirk, just not enough deep passing need yet. And Dan Arnold just not getting nearly enough target share to warrant a tight end start. Cardinals defense is interesting to me, but if this game turns into a shootout, I probably don't want to be playing either defense here, so I'll try to avoid them. Overall, I think the Cardinals can win this game, but I think it will be close. I got the Cardinals winning 28-27, winning with a final drive, or we could have another situation where they were to stop Matthew Stafford from coming back, although he's very good at that. I think the Cardinals can edge this one out. So this is technically hitting the under in this game, but still a very high scoring game overall, 28-27. Ooh, so dropping or holding Ruggs is that's an interesting question. I'm going to hold him. I do think at some point they're going to unleash him, and maybe last week was more a product of him being hurt and them not wanting to, risk too much with him. He looked really good in week 1 before he had left the game for a while due to that injury he sustained. I believe it was a knee injury. I can't remember exactly. So Ruggs is a hold for me. He's not someone you can start or put into your lineup, but at least he showed us enough in week 1 that he has a lot of upside. Give him a few more weeks. It normally takes rookie wide receivers, to actually work their way into the offense. And I really think we're seeing that, especially this year with the truncated preseason and training camp. Just wait it out on some of these rookies. Give them some time to get acclimated into the offense. Don't panic or give up on them just yet. Take a swig. All right. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Denver Broncos, if we have to. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been a bit disappointing on offense from what we've expected from them, and the Broncos have been decent on defense. We typically see the Broncos perform a bit better at home, so I feel like this over-under being at 43 is about right. Maybe even that's a bit too high. Buccaneers are road favorites here, favored by 6, implied point total of 24.5 versus 18.5. Buccaneers defense has been really good as well. With the exception of the running back position, they've been, above average at every spot. Broncos pretty much average with the exception of giving up a lot of points to the receiver, but they've also played some really good pass offenses with Corey Davis going off against them in week 1. And we saw Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson go off last week. I guess Juju had an okay game, but with Bouye, I believe he's still out this week. Could be a rough outing again for the Broncos secondary. In terms of who we're starting this week, I mean, the Buccaneers side is pretty easy for me. Fournette looked absolutely dominant last week once he actually started to see the touches. I think Ronald Jones is dust at this point. They haven't officially announced a starter, but do not be surprised if Fournette gets the go here with Ronald Jones fumbling the ball away and LaShawn McCoy dropping an easy touchdown, whereas Leonard Fournette getting the job done for him. I think Leonard Fournette is the guy from here on out until he proves otherwise. Evans and Godwin. Godwin's back from that concussion. Evans looks like he's recovered from his hamstring. You're firing both of them up, and I think the Buccaneers defense is a really good play this week. Playing against Jeff Driscoll should be good for a few sacks, a few picks, or a forced fumble here or there, and hopefully they get a defensive score here. So I think the Bucs are probably top 3 defense on the week. If you got them this week, or if they're still sitting on your waiver wire, you should definitely grab them. As we mentioned, Ronald Jones is someone that we're probably avoiding at this point, unless he shows up this week and proves that, the coach, Bruce Arians, is able to just forgive and forget with that fumble. I just don't see a world where they go back to Ronald Jones this week, but we'll see. Tom Brady has been very disappointing from a fantasy angle. I'm not firing him up this week. I think he'll be okay, but there's plenty of other better options out there. Not starting LaShawn McCoy. He may even just be a healthy scratch. Like, Tom Brady was pissed the way that he just dropped that ball in the end zone, so I'm not playing him. Scott Miller was a complete bust last week, which we kind of called that, but I'm not playing him with Godwin back in. And then the tight end situation here, I mean, Gronk is barely being used. OJ Howard had a crappy game last week. So if you had to start one, I guess you go Howard hoping for a touchdown. But I'm just trying to avoid the tight ends here until we actually see something from them. Probably not even worth rostering either of these guys at this point. On the Broncos side, Melvin Gordon is going to remain a good play. I think part of the reason why the BUCS have one of the more points allowed to the running back, similar situation as we had with a couple other teams. They played Christian McCaffrey and they've played Alvin Kamara, so you can expect them to have given up a lot of points. Now, with Melvin Gordon being involved a bit more in the passing game, he was still able to salvage a pretty good day last week, and I expect him to have something similar here. There's just no one else on this offense after they've lost Cortland Sutton and Phillip Lindsay. Melvin Gordon is going to have to get a lot of work regardless of what the game script is here. And then Noah Fant, I think you can still start. He's pretty much a every week start for me, even with Jeff Driscoll, because his ability to just create plays is very similar to Jonnu Smith. Like, you just got to get him one play in space and he can create and give you your entire fantasy value in one single play. Jerry Jeudy, after taking over, basically is now the wide receiver one. I'm nervous about him being able to perform consistently with Jeff Driscoll, so I'm probably going to try to avoid him. And the Broncos defense could be a decent play. We've seen Brady make a few mistakes up to this point. Ronald Jones had that fumble last week, but probably not going to be jamming them into my lineup unless you absolutely have to. I'm not playing Driscoll, I'm not playing Royce Freeman, and we'll keep an eye on KJ Hamler, but I'm not trying to jam him into my lineup just yet. I think the BUCS are going to win this one pretty easily. Got them winning 28-14. Okay, let's talk about the Sunday night game between the Green Bay Packers and the New Orleans Saints. Very strange game overall from what we would have thought this game would have been a few weeks ago before the season started. Could be without the star receivers for both of these teams. Michael Thomas trending towards being out, dealing with a high ankle sprain, and Davante Adams has not practiced officially yet. He is trending to be out this week with that hamstring injury. I'm not sure on that one yet. Don't quote me, because they could have a surprise and he could be active, but it sucks for fantasy because this is the Sunday night game. You're going to have a backup play just in case Davante Adams can't go, which hopefully you're able to pick up Tre'Quan Smith this week. I think that's your plan if you have Davante Adams. Now, this is still a very high over-under, 52.5. Saints are favored to win this one. I guess it's because they're at home. I don't really understand that one, but I'll let it go. Packers have been pretty average across the board against on defense, whereas the Saints, they've actually given up a decent bit of points. Derek Carr was able to really have his way with them last week, especially with Darren Waller. Packers don't really have a tight end of note, and if Davante Adams isn't there, that could be a problem. But Aaron Jones has been a force of nature, as has Alvin Kamara. So I don't really see this one hitting the over, but I definitely think there's going to be some fantasy plays here. Of course, you're going to start Adams if he plays because, based on the report, he could have come back into that game last week. So that's why I'm surprised that he's trending towards being out at this point. So maybe they were lying in terms of him being able to come back in last week, but don't be surprised if he ends up being active. And if he's active, I'm still playing him. If Adams is out, I think you can throw a spot start on MVS or Lazard just because Rodgers has to throw to someone. But this could be a rough outing for the Packers pass game. It's hard to bench Rodgers at this point because he's just been playing lights out, and someone is going to score points there if Rodgers is playing well. Probably not going to only be Aaron Jones, but maybe. Aaron Jones, of course, you're playing him every single week until he gives us a reason not to. Probably not going to play the Packers defense, even though I do expect this to be a little bit lower scoring. We'll see if Breeze can come back after that atrocious game on Monday night. Not playing Jamal Williams here. On the Saints, of course, you're playing Alvin Kamara. You're going to play Jared Cook. And I think Tre'Quan Smith is a pretty good start this week with Michael Thomas trending towards out. He looked much better than Emmanuel Sanders last week. Like, Emmanuel Sanders looked like dust. So we'll see what Tre'Quan Smith can do this week, but I think he's definitely worth a flex play, especially if you have Adams. Gives you a really nice pivot option in case Adams is ruled out later in the day, because this is a Sunday night game. You need to kind of have that backup plan. Tre'Quan Smith gives you a really good backup plan. Breeze looked pretty cooked. I'm concerned about him long-term. Even when Michael Thomas comes back, he just did not look like himself. We'll see if he can rebound here against the Packers, but watching Drew Brees play, It felt a lot like watching Peyton Manning play in his final season, where he just wasn't able to do anywhere near what he was able to before. So I'm hesitant to play Breeze in this game, even in a decent matchup with a high over-under. I think there's better options out there. Emmanuel Sanders looked lost on Monday night. We'll see if he can come back to earth, because he looked decent in week 1, but I'm probably not trusting him unless I have to, and I'm not going to play either defense here just based on the possibility of it turning into a shootout. Latavius Murray has looked like garbage, and Deontay Harris had a couple of looks last week, but not someone I'm trying to jam into my lineup by any means. I think the Packers can win this one even without Devontae Adams. I mean, if the Raiders can beat the Saints, I think the Packers can beat the Saints, but maybe that's just my Packers bias coming in. But I got the Packers winning 28-20. Okay, and let's talk the most exciting game on the slate. A week 3 matchup. We got week 3 again with these guys. KC versus Baltimore. Got the Chiefs and the Ravens, Super Bowl defending champs, facing the team that everyone thought would be the Super Bowl team last year that fizzled out in the playoffs. Now, last year, these teams faced off. The Chiefs won, but it was in Kansas City. This game in Baltimore could be pretty interesting. That Monday night primetime game. Very excited for this one. 54.5 point over under. Ravens are actually favored to win by 3.5. I feel like this is the first time the Chiefs have been favored to lose in a while. The Chiefs have actually given up a decent amount of points to every spot except for the wide receiver, and the Ravens have been very good on defense overall. So something's got to give. I don't really care about defenses when it comes to the Chiefs offense, because Patrick Mahomes is able to get it done. He still had a great game even against the Chargers last week. He's going to get it done again. That's just what Patrick Mahomes does. The question mark here is in terms of game script. Is this going to be a game script like it was last year, where the Chiefs offense was doing great and the Ravens were barely able to keep up? Or is this going to be a situation where, like we saw last year with the Colts, when they were able to grind the clock out and run the ball on the Chiefs and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands? Because that really is the true key to defeating the Chiefs. If you can keep the time of possession on your side, keep scoring on long drives, it kind of drains the momentum of this offense, because we saw last year when they faced the Texans, once they get leveled up, it's very hard to stop them. But that was kind of the game plan with the Chargers on Sunday, and it almost worked. And I think the Ravens might be trying that same game plan. So that is my only, tepid worry, that this game doesn't turn out to be the fantasy bonanza that we're hoping it would be. Because if they can do that, they can slow down the production of all of the main guys here. But there's no way I'm going to talk you into benching any of them. Of course, you're starting Mahomes, you're starting Edwards-Helaire, you're starting Hill, and you're starting Kelsey. Unless these guys are hurt, you're playing them every single week, regardless of matchup. I'm guessing that Sammy Watkins is not going to play. We haven't heard squat from him all week. He's still in the concussion protocol, and whenever Sammy Watkins is on the injury report, it normally means he's out for a couple of weeks. So he's pretty much gone for me. Mecole Hardman becomes an interesting play in that regard, taking over that wide receiver 2 role. Could have a big play. If you absolutely need a spot start and are just praying for a big touchdown, Mecole Hardman could get that done for you, but not someone I'm trying to put into my lineup, and probably not going to really look to play either defense here, even though they've both been performing well for fantasy. Demarcus Robinson, Darwin Thompson, just know they might have okay games, but not someone that's they don't have anywhere near the target share, the volume share that we're hoping for. On the Ravens side, I think Lamar Jackson is probably your best start the entire week. I'm still willing to throw Marquise Brown in there, even though the Chiefs have been better against receivers. We saw Keenan Allen have a decent game, and he's another one of those guys that could just make your entire week for that spot in one single play. So you got to keep rolling with Marquise Brown, and of course you're sticking with Mark Andrews. Even after a poor performance last week, they're going to need to up their game on offense this week, and I think Mark Andrews gets himself back into the end zone. Where this gets interesting is we're expecting this to be a run-heavy game for the Ravens, but what does that mean for Mark Ingram? What does that mean for J.K. Dobbins? This whole situation is an absolute mess right now, and last week it was Ingram, and week 1 it was Dobbins. If you had to pick one, it's probably going to be Ingram this week, but Dobbins just looks like every time he touches the ball, he looks like the better runner. I don't know what is going to happen going forward from this point. We're just going to have to wait it out. If you have these guys, you're probably forced to start them just based on the amount of injuries we've had. But if you have the luxury of being able to bench them, I would do so until we get some more clarity on this offense. But it looks like the plan is to mix in Ingrams and Dobbins based on the opponent. And then if the Ravens start blowing the other team out, they bench both of them and put Edwards in to close the game down. So that just creates a very murky situation. There's a lot of fantasy points to be had here. It's going to be kind of a dart throw figuring out who it's going to be each week, at least until we get some more clarity there. Miles Boykin, Willie Snead, one of these guys is probably going to score and make me look dumb, but I'm not jamming either of them into my lineup. And the Ravens defense, I would play them if you had to. Not worth like rostering multiple defenses and having to drop people, but not your best play this week. Never a good idea to play defense against Patrick Mahomes. I think the Chiefs win this one. I'm not thinking that their game script of trying to run the ball out is going to work for them. I think the Chiefs can continue to perform well on this team, even though they have a really good defense. But I don't bet against the Chiefs. That's just not a moneymaker at this point. So I got the Chiefs winning this one 31-27. But don't be surprised if the scoring is a little bit lower than this based on what we've talked about thus far. And that is it, guys. Whew. All right, I've gotten through a ton of games up to this point. I'm exhausted now, but thank you guys for those of you that joined me. Those of you who come back and watch the stream later, appreciate it. If you joined the stream late and missed anything, I'll go back and clip these and post the individual games. They'll be going up tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Good luck to you guys this week. Hit me up in the comment section with any questions you have, and we will see you guys in the next video. Oh, before I go, I'll answer your question, Rain. Is Kareem Hunt, Edelman, and Juju a good trade for Michael Thomas? I would say no. Because what we've seen historically with high ankle sprains is players force themselves back before they're healthy. So a high ankle sprain, it never takes less than 4 to 6 weeks to fully heal. Even if the player comes back in 2 weeks, he's not fully healthy. And we saw this with Saquon Barkley last year. He sucked for a good 4 weeks because he was still recovering from that high ankle sprain. And there's so much that goes into that muscle structure of the higher ankle that really impedes your ability to play professional football at the skill position, that I think Michael Thomas is going to have a bit sour performance for at least through October. So while I would still rather have Michael Thomas on my team than any of the guys you listed come playoff time, I mean, Kareem Hunt is a running back 1 right now. Julian Edelman is a wide receiver 1, and Juju is a wide receiver 1. That's way too much to give up for a guy that might not even be that productive for you for 6 weeks. Wait a couple more weeks for Michael Thomas to not be that good and go back to that same guy. He's going to be willing to give you a much better deal for Michael Thomas. But yeah, I would not trade those 3 guys for Michael Thomas. All right. I think that's it. Again, you can comment on any of my videos. I'll get back to you as soon as I see it. And yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.